It's not normal for a fight to break out every time the family gets together. What's really beneath, way beneath the surface, other than, oh, well, they just never got along. You know how they are. They just never got. What's really at the root cause?
Welcome to Girl Talk with your girl Melissa, and so excited to be here today. We have a special guest in the studio with us today, and I'll allow her to introduce herself in a moment. But just want to talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss today. So, as you know, I've been doing a series on 5 things that my therapist has taught me, and so the last couple of episodes we talked about the 80-20 rule. Then we talked about the baggage that we carry and letting go. And within that baggage that we carry, oftentimes is baggage that comes from childhood trauma. Ursula is a phenomenal author, and her book dives into family trauma and instances where we are carrying that baggage. And so we're going to have a conversation and dialogue related to that baggage, but her book as well. So making sure that we're correlating the two. I'm excited about the conversation. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Ursula and want to make sure that we see and pick up her book. Ursula, thank you for joining Girl Talk.
Hey, Melissa, thank you for having me. Ursula Hughes, and I reside in the Bay Area where I've lived most of my life. Worked here in Silicon Valley my entire career, and life took another course. And yeah, so here we have my debut novel, Picking Up Breadcrumbs: A Journey of Uncovering Family Secrets.
Yes, and you became a full-time author, which I think is the dream of every author that is starting out. You had an interesting title for yourself when you and I spoke. When I said, "Are you self-published?" You said you are what?
I'm independently published because there's
That's right.
no way that I could have produced this book by myself. So, from a team of authors and a team of editors, rather, to a critique team, to graphic artists, inside developer, layout designer. These people, a bunch of hands and eyes on this novel.
Very awesome. So, I'm going to do a little something differently today. Before we dive into the conversation, normally I'll dive into the conversation, then I'll have you read an excerpt from your book. But I'd like for you to read an excerpt from your book, kick it off, and then we could piggyback off of that conversation and then dive into the baggage and how it correlates with family, et cetera. Does that sound good with you?
Sounds perfect.
All right, let's hear it. I'm excited.
Well, let me set up the scene for you a little bit and tell you a little bit about the book. This novel, it is fiction, which of course a novel is. It takes the point of view of Darby Coleman Shields. She's a millennial wife, mother, and career woman with an 8-year-old son. And this follows her journey of finding out that her 8-year-old son, Robbie, was molested by none other than the patriarch of her family, her father. And so kicks off, this scene I'm going to read kicks off very early. It's actually part of chapter 3. It is the inciting incident, the thing that sets the story in motion. And
Yep.
this is a story about family dynamics. But in this scene, we see her trauma response upon getting the revelation. During the 30-mile drive, I can think of nothing other than holding him accountable for violating Robbie. He won't get to speak. I won't stand for some snarky denial. Just like that, it'll be all over. Nothing else. The end. Along the highway, the California poppies have sprouted, signaling signs of spring, the season of renewal, a sign that all is well. Yes, soon it will be. I take my sunglasses from the console and take in the warmth of the sun beaming through the windshield. Everything will be just fine. Up ahead, I see that there is road work and repaving going on. My fingers tremble as they grip the wheel. Maybe I'll have to take an indirect route, which will be longer. I wonder if there will be a detour. The traffic creeps along for what seems like an eternity. Along the way, workers repave the highway, while a few others motion to keep the flow going. I'm relieved when the mild congestion ends and the movement picks up. The suburban street is noticeably quiet when I turn onto his lane. The mature foliage of the neighborhood tells the story of a place where children once played but have now left the nest. The eastern sun is settled on the dew-kissed lawns, leaving sidewalks dampened from its moisture. A neighborhood cat has been sunbathing against the garage door, but he scrambles away at the sound of my car finally pulling against the curb. Yes, I'm finally here. I find Papa George in his front yard tending to his award winning roses, which line the window. He's got on his usual baseball cap that he's never without, along with his oversized gardening shirt. And although he's almost 70, he could easily pass for a man in his late 50s. He attributes his youthful appearance to the amount of melanin in his skin. And whenever he gets the opportunity, he loves to chant, "The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice," before breaking into deep laughter. With his back towards me, his tall, lanky frame is in full view. He steps back, admires his rose bushes, then bends down to pull a stray weed that has sprouted from the ground beneath them. Perfect. I reach for my purse on the seat beside me and step out of the car. He hears the door closing and turns around with a pleasant, though puzzled, look of surprise. This is even better. "Hi, Darby. Didn't you go to work today?" I don't acknowledge him. Instead, I take the pistol from my purse and aim directly at his chest. My throat is dry. My bottom lip shakes, yet my hand is steady. He drops the garden glove he's been holding. His mouth opens, his body stiffens as he stares at the pistol pointed directly at his chest. I squeeze the trigger.
That was a very, very, very powerful scene. So, when you were writing that, well, first of all, I want to know what emotions came up for you, because the emotions that came up for me was, if that were my child, I think I would have the same reaction. There's no conversation. We're going to get down to the business of it. So,
Well, first of all, that my reason for writing the book, parts of it come from my creative imagination, and yet parts of it are inspired by my life. My life and my observations, and yeah. So blending those two things, we come up with this book, Picking Up Breadcrumbs. So to answer your question, I was trying to put myself in the shoes of this millennial mom and what she would do based on her reaction, which is post traumatic stress.
obviously, it's a millennial woman. But when I think about it from even my perspective, I am a product of molestation, not from a family member, but from outside of the home. And um, I didn't have that reaction. So, how were you feeling from an emotional standpoint as you were writing that?
Well, that very thing that you mentioned, here we have the conflict of Darby, this character who it is a family member, not only a family member, but someone she looks up to, someone that she has, until this occurrence, has had a good relationship with, and that is her father. And so the conflict, her sense of betrayal, disbelief, and the harming of her child. So while I was writing this, I was getting a visual of a grizzly bear, right? And knowing that mammals are mammals, and here is a mama bear, and something evil has harmed her child, and how would she respond? And I said, write this from the perspective of a grizzly bear. She goes and picks up a gun, and yeah, so that excerpt was hearing all of those emotions that I imagined she would have.
Yeah. And I asked that question is because it is very detailed. I was actually picturing every little piece of what you were saying. Oh, even with the roses lined across and the shirt that he had on, I could visualize all of that. And so that was the basis of that question was, man, you had to have some true emotions even writing that, the way that you allowed the reader to visualize every bit of that, and even think about what you would do as a parent if that occurred in your household, right? And I think that, most parents would go down her path, even though she is a millennial. But it's hard because that, like you said, that is her dad as well. So it had to be a harder sacrifice for her. What are some of the things that you're hearing? You have quite a few reviews on Amazon. What are some of the things that you're hearing as far as feedback from an emotional standpoint that others are feeling, and is very timely, right? I think you and I talked about this. This is something that people just sweep under the rug in most instances.
Well, one thing that I'm thrilled about is that readers have captured that this is not the story of a little boy and what happened to a little boy in this family. It's the story of family dynamics and how this was right to happen in the first place. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I've had so many readers, capture, the very essence of what I was, looking to put across. Those family dynamics, sweep it under the rug, and I'm sure not unique to our culture, but the saying I think just hovers over our Black culture. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Now, I can't even imagine how many generations that's been passed down, but
Yep.
certainly it permeated, my generation as a baby boomer. So, this is a generational curse. This is the story of a generational curse. And as you said, we'll talk about sexual assault. We'll talk about domestic violence, but we don't talk about sexual violence within the family. So that was my sole reason for writing this book, was to start a conversation that many, many people are living out in adult post-traumatic lives, and the
Yeah.
root of some behaviors of their own post-trauma, and the root being family sexual violence.
Yeah, and the triggers that come along with it, and like you said, don't air our dirty laundry. What stays in the house, what happens in the house stays in the house. It's no one else's business. But there are triggers, from even the other podcasts or series that I've talked about. Those are all rocks that you place in on your backpack, right? And your backpack weighs you down because there is a trigger. And what's, even though it's not just about the little boy and the mom, it's about the family business. But the little boy has to carry that, and now he has to, either go to therapy, or he has to carry it, or he has a trigger, or there's going to be some type of trauma, so that continues down the path. Is that something, as you get towards the end of the book, that's dealt with in your story?
Well, yeah, it is dealt with, specifically Robbie, the 8-year-old. What's not dealt with is this family. Well, it's not dealt with as far as in this novel. It is not resolved. It is still unresolved, and the typical, yeah, probably typical family response to Darby, airing this, exposing it. Well, the family circles the wagon. Very peculiar. The family members, the sisters, they circle the wagon in protection of the perpetrator. And I think about our culture, how often, how common is that? We'll say, oh, at the family cookout, there's Uncle Bobo. Oh, you know how he is. Keep those kids away
He
from
didn't
him.
mean nothing by
Yeah. The
it.
perpetrator's sitting there. Somebody's already been victimized a generation or two before, And this is their response to the sexual violence within the family and the
Yeah.
innocent children. Instead of outing him and casting him as, they're protecting the perpetrator instead of protecting not only the victim but would-be victims, because the perpetrator keeps on going. There is not only just one. He keeps on going because he can get away with it. He knows he can get away with it because the family, oh, we don't want to send another black man to prison, or you know how, yeah.
Or victim blaming. What did they do?
Exactly. Exactly.
What
All of
what did
that.
they have? What did she have on? What did he have on? Must have did something.
And so I love, your analogy with the rocks in the backpack and carrying those rocks. Going through life, and life, we think it's linear. We like to believe it's linear until we drop into a pothole. Pothole. Just the regular, everyday stuff of life. It could be getting laid off from work. It could be anything. But those are rocks, and then all
Yep.
of a sudden it's just too hard to bear, and breakdowns happen, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you got to get to the root. It goes all the way back to childhood, and it's time to take those rocks out the backpack.
And it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's very calm and even keel. Well, she was dealing with family issues or whatever, and then she snapped. And I'm like, that was a little tiny pebble that you dropped in that backpack, and it was too much.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why it's important to remove those rocks as they come along. And that is something else that our culture is not good at doing. And we could go back to what we said. We sweep things under the rug, or we just dismiss it, or we victim point the blame on the victim, etc.
exactly, exactly. So, once again, yeah, to start a conversation around these family dynamics and what is really going on, the family drama. Well, it's not normal for a fight to break out every time the family gets together. What's really way beneath the surface, other than, oh well, they just never got along. You know how they are. They just never got. What's really at the root cause?
That's exactly right. And there is always some type of root cause, whether it's jealousy, or someone got more than the other person, or they were treated differently. They did something in the family and they didn't get away with it, but the next person got away with it, or they got more than that person, etc. We could go all the way down the line, but there's always something that's underlining. But more importantly, especially when you're talking about the older generations, they allow the perpetuation of stuff to fester. And then that person continues to do it to the next person, the next person, the next person. I saw a post on Instagram where he talked about the black sheep, because the black sheep comes in and exposes everyone. And that's why they're the black sheep. Like,
They see through everybody else's bull. So the title "Picking Up Breadcrumbs" just came to me, inspired, of course, by the story of Hansel and Gretel, a fairy tale where they drop breadcrumbs in the forest as they're going. I forget where they're going, so that they could find their way back home. They would follow the breadcrumbs. And we see Darby metaphorically following these breadcrumbs of the family secrets, the dynamics, the stories that had been told, that she realized, wait, this is a family, it doesn't add up. And the family, there's always people within the family who know the secret.
mm-hmm.
They're part of the problem because they certainly aren't the solution. They're keeping the secret of the pedophile, the perpetrator, for whatever reasons. We don't want to break up it'll do this to the family. It'll everything but protecting the children, the victim. And so Darby follows these breadcrumbs, these stories, these things that don't add, all sorts of things. And so we could see her character arc, if you will, from the beginning of the story to how we view her at the beginning of the story, who she is at the beginning of the story, all the way to the end.
I was looking at the top, at the cover of it, and She means business. You can tell just by the character here. She means business. She wants to get to like the nitty gritty, and you could tell just by her stance and her body language that she means business. She's ready to get down to it. When I was reading the back, what caught my attention was a piece of chewing the fat. What do you mean by that?
Oh, chewing the fat. Oh my goodness, it's an old term that means talking, and I believe it has its roots in Southern dialect. Chewing the fat, just sitting around talking, just sitting around, you know, shooting the breeze. Same thing.
Okay. I've heard, chew the meat, spit out the bone. So get the good part and throw away the bad part of any conversation. So it's probably similar to that. You're chewing on the fat and having that conversation. But those are the older the older terms that we grew up hearing, but not necessarily knowing what it meant, and we were regurgitating, if you will, in our dialogue without understanding the full meaning of it. But I think that um, your character, it seems like, and transparently to the listeners, I haven't finished the entire book, but it seems like there is a level of maturity that she had to adopt on the fly, even though she is a professional and a millennial. It seemed like she had to get a whole new skill set of maturity to address some of these things. Is that an accurate synopsis?
Well, yeah, that's what I was portraying her to. She had to. It's very primal. It's very primal. It's totally transparent to her. She doesn't even realize. But like I said, just like any other mammal, in that grizzly bear analogy, she's standing up on her hind legs, responding the only way that she knows to respond without even thinking of it. And so
Hmm.
the scene that I read, and you said, you could picture this and that. And, she's really, that's what I was trying to project. She's really in a trance. She sees the usual flowers. She sees the, whatever the scene is on the road. She's in a trance until she steps out and sees him. You know, you have harmed my young, and it becomes very primal.
Yeah, even to she pulled up to the curb and the cat was there. Like it was all like pretty innocent until she stepped in the house and went in that bag. I think if we were to, kind of talk through that character and things that you see today, it was really, you have to put your big girl panties on in any situation. And while this is a fiction book, we can definitely take her characteristics and apply it to situations in our own lives about not sitting in mess and wallowing in it, figuring out, get to the root of the issue. Put your big girl panties on and get to the root of the issue and fix the issue versus carrying it or sweeping it under the rug, or leaving it in a big pile of mess for someone else to clean up. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah, what you just said, it reminds me, what just brought to my mind based on what you just said. We all have triggers, and we hear that it's almost like the word has lost its effectiveness because it's used so much. That's part of the human experience. But the question is, so what do you do? And I
Right.
saw this quote that just expressed, the way I feel about it. It says, "You don't overcome trauma by ignoring it. You overcome trauma by confronting it."
Wow.
And so that's what we see this character do. Once again, she doesn't know. There's no method to the madness, but that's exactly what we see her do in this novel. She confronts the trauma. It's funny that you mentioned her stance on the cover of the book. She means business.
She does.
It's purely the inciting incident, the awful revelation is the thing that kicks think she becomes a different person. She means business. um, yeah, that's the thing that kicks the story off.
She's doing it with class, even with the way she's dressed in the on the cover. Is she not coming like let's see, what word would I use, like a roughneck? She coming like, I have some class, but I'm going to politely use my tools to let you know I'm not falling for the BS.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about art is that it's subject to interpretation. One person might see whatever, painting, literature, whatever creative thing it is. One person might see another thing and something different. And here she is, she's just dressed in her work clothes.
Yeah. When I took it as, okay, she means business. Like, she rolled up her sleeves. If you look at her, her sleeves are rolled up. She ready to get it in. So before we end here, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we probably could go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. We'd love to have you back, especially with a group of ladies. But where can people get the book? Where can they find you to connect to you?
Okay, so the book, Picking Up Breadcrumbs, A Journey of Uncovering Family Secrets, is available wherever books are sold, whether that's Amazon online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, Walmart online, all book outlets. Um, and you can find me, Ursula, Ursula underscore Hughes underscore author. That's my handle, Instagram, and Ursula Hughes on Facebook.
Wonderful. Any final words that you want to leave with the audience?
That quote is just resonating with me. The best way to confront trauma. We all have triggers, but those things come back in life. They never go away if they're left unresolved. So we don't um, overcome trauma by ignoring it. We overcome it by confronting it. And we see Darby in this novel pick up a whole bunch of courage and confront trauma.
That's right. Confront your trauma. That's the tough part.
That it is tough.
That's the tough part because you got to be able to bring up all those emotions that you put place way deep down and buried them away. But that's the beauty of, you know, therapists.
Yeah, and I guess I am a visual person, but I visualize this monster, right? And its name is trauma. But if you don't confront it, he will continue. He will continue to confront you, right? It lifelong. This is lifelong, and so yeah. So that's what I believe.
Yeah, and with this, like, one of the things I learned by going and having counseling sessions was trauma shows up everywhere. You might have experienced it as a child or an adult or midlife or whatever it was, but that follows you, like you said, and it shows up everywhere. It shows up in how you address someone and what you will and what you won't do, a trigger, so those things show up and then you respond to them, are all trauma responses. And we specifically in our culture do not address that.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it comes up, she's aggressive, she's that, she's this, she's this, but it's not. It's their trauma responses that have been unresolved.
yeah.
So, Ursula, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I have enjoyed the conversation. And this has been another Girl Talk production, and I'm so excited about this episode. And as always, I see you because I am you.